I am standing in a grain storage facility. It's the last shed of its kind in Australia, and it's the last piece of World War II farming history found here in the Wimmera in northwest Victoria. It is massive. At 19 metres tall and 60 metres wide, it's almost impossible to comprehend how far the other end is at 265 metres. Heritage listed in 2014, the stick shed, or Matoa #1 grain store, was built over 4 months between September 1941 and January 1942 and filled with grain within 6 months of construction. It was the first emergency bulk wheat storage shed built in Victoria and the last still standing out of the 29 emergency grain stores built during the Second World War, when Australia had a glut of wheat and international export routes were closed. Designed to fit 92,500 tonnes of grain during its working life, now visitors can walk around in it, but it is far from empty. The space is filled with almost the aura of the sublime, due in huge part to the lighting that draws immediate comparisons to lighting one might find in a building with theatrical or religious intentions. Where screws or nails have fallen out over the years, tiny pinholes of light create patterns on the floor that change as the sun moves throughout the day. Often referred to as the Cathedral of the Wimmera, it's easy to see why. The layout is similar to a church, with a central aisle reminiscent of a nave, and one could be forgiven for expecting an altar in the apse-like space at the end. This is a building that exudes the aura of a sacred space, despite its utilitarian nature. Its dark interior, punctured only by pinholes of light and a few skylights directing the eye to the central aisle, give the space a sense of stillness. There is a great sense of being removed from the outside world. From its beginnings as a hastily constructed wheat storage shed that unwittingly hints at the sacred and the sublime, the Matoa stick shed contrasts with another building intentionally created as a sacred space, yet one that embodies strikingly similar architectural ideas. The Thorn Crown Chapel. Built as a space for non-denominational reflection and contemplation in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, by local architect E. Fay Jones. Described as Ozark Gothic, Thorn Crown was built at the request of a schoolteacher in 1980 who wanted a little chapel to provide wayfarers a place for relaxation. The chapel exemplifies Louis Sullivan's idea that form follows function. That is, a building's purpose should be the starting point for its design rather than its aesthetics, and this is also true for the stick shed. Not an inch of superfluous material was included in its construction. Even the angle of the roof was designed to be at the natural repose of stacked wheat. This adds to the impression of the stick shed being a natural part of the landscape, with its rusty red exterior and unmilled mountain ash poles sourced from within Victoria. The Thorn Crown Chapel was designed to fit within its landscape, with almost all the materials coming from the surrounding Ozark Mountains. In order to preserve Thorn Crown's natural setting, Fay Jones decided that no structural element could be larger than what 2 men could carry through the woods on foot. There is a direct line of creative descent from Louis Sullivan, as Fay Jones was a student of Frank Lloyd Wright, who was in turn an apprentice under Louis Sullivan himself, and the influence of both architects is evident in Thorn Crown Chapel's design, including the use of native materials, the simplicity of design, and integration of the building to its site. Both buildings have many details in common, including an economy of design. Every structural decision and material used is visible, the way each building fits into its own landscape, and how each is a product of limitations during construction in terms of space, manpower, and the size of materials to be managed. But the most striking similarity is how each building seems to contain an immaterial and intangible other quality that Rudolf Otto described as a characteristic we can feel without being able to give it clear conceptual expression. At Thorncrown, light changing throughout the day highlights the chapel's exposure to all of the elements, while at the Stickshed, the lack of light by way of windows and ventilation heightens other sensory experiences: heat, dust, the noise from the working grain stores nearby. Yet in both buildings, it is this element of ether that transforms the terrestrial elements into something extraordinary.